alhamdulillah, so we take this opportunity to mention some of the fada'il and the manaqib of Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab. Just to remind us that our way is to praise Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And our way is to praise the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam as the best of creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Not comparing the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the Rabbul Alameen, He is the Lord. But when we talk about praising the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, we are praising him as the best of creation. And there are ways also to relate the virtues and the fadail and the manaqib of the Ahlul Bayt, and also of the Sahaba, radiallahu anhu, and also of the awliya Allah and the Salihin. This is the way of the Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah. We're not people who criticize one group and hold on to one and say we love the Ahlul Bayt, but we criticize the Sahaba. We're not ones to criticize the Ahlul Bayt and praise the Sahaba. No, the way of the Ahlul Sunnah, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen, is to hold fast to praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hold fast to the madh and the praising of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and the loving of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and his Ahlul Bayt and the Sahaba and all the Salihin. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the verse that I recited, وَمَن يُطِعِ اللَّهَ وَالرَّسُولَ, the one who obeys Allah and His Messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, فَأُولَٰئِكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ أَنْعَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمْ, then those people will be with those that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has favored. مِنَ النَّبِيِّينَ, from the prophets, وَالصِّدِّيقِينَ, and the righteous ones, وَالشُّهَدَاءِ, and from the martyrs, وَالصَّالِحِينَ, and the righteous and the virtuous people, the Salihin, the pious people. So these are the categories that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has outlined in the Quran. And when we recite Surah Al-Fatiha, we say, Ihdina as-sirat al-mustaqim. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to guide us on the straight path. What is this path? Sirat al-ladhina an'amta alayhim, the path of those that you have favored. And who are these? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes them in this other verse. من النبيين والصديقين والشهداء والصالحين. This is the path that we want to follow. We want to follow the path of the Nabiyyin, the prophets, the Siddeeqeen, the righteous people, the Shuhada, the martyrs, and the Salihin, and the pious people. Ameen ya Rahman Rahim. And we want to be united with them in the Akhirah ya Rabbil Alameen. Once the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was on Mount Uhud, and with him was Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddeeq, Sayyidina Umar al-Faruq, and Sayyidina Uthman radiallahu anhum. And Mount Uhud began to shake. And Mount Uhud began to tremble. And this is in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet ﷺ communicated with Mount Uhud, because the Prophet ﷺ, one of the mu'jizat and one of the miracles bestowed upon him ﷺ by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is that he could communicate and also hear the communication of the inanimate things, like the mountains and the rocks. He could hear the tasbih of the rocks and the pebbles. He could communicate with the animals. He could understand their communication, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So he began to communicate. He said, calm down, Uhud. Don't you know that upon you right now is a prophet, a Nabi, a Siddeeq, and 2 Shuhada? That on you right now, trotting upon you right now is a Nabi, is a prophet, referring to himself, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. A Siddeeq, referring to Sayyidina Abu Bakr, and 2 martyrs, Shuhada, referring to Sayyidina Umar and Sayyidina Uthman. So the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was informed of the martyrdom of his 2 companions, Sayyidina Umar and Sayyidina Uthman, before it happened. And that's why he said that the 2 Shuhada are upon you right now. He knew that they were going to be martyred. This is the ilm, and this is the ilm of the unseen that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestowed upon His beloved Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So if we look at the life of Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, Al-Faruq, his title is Al-Faruq. Al-Faruq comes from the word, or the root Arabic word faraqa, or farraqa, which means to separate something. So Al-Faruq in context means that he was distinguishing between truthful and falsehood. He was so firm in his religion and so steadfast radiallahu anhu that he was given the title of Al-Faruq, that he was distinguishing between haqq and batil. And when he came to Islam, and when he accepted Islam and reverted to Islam, it gave such a strength to the ummah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And it was actually from the dua of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that he accepted Islam. Because there were 2 Umars that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam made dua for. And one was Umar ibn Khattab, and the other was Abu Jahl, whose name was also Umar. Abu Jahl was his title, but he was the enemy of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then Sayyidina Umar, his name was Umar, and Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu was also named Umar. The Prophet ﷺ would ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that, oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, strengthen Islam by one of the two Umars. And indeed, in the heart of the Prophet ﷺ, he wanted Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab to come. And indeed, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepted the dua of the Prophet ﷺ when Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab heard the recitation of the Quran, Surah Taha, that was being recited at the house of the sister of Sayyidina Umar, radiallahu anha, who was already a Muslim. And that affected him so much that he was going to actually kill, na'udhu billah. He couldn't do it, but his intention was to assassinate the Prophet ﷺ. But instead of assassinating, he came and he submitted to the kalima, and he submitted to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and he became Muslim. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said about Sayyidina Umar, he said that if Sayyidina Umar is walking down a road, and Shaitan is walking down that same road, Shaitan takes another route. In another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said that Shaitan runs away from the shadow of Umar. Shaitan runs away from the shadow of Umar radiallahu anhu. So we have to mention the manaqib of the Sahaba. As the Prophet ﷺ said, each one of my companions are like the stars, the guiding stars. And indeed, when we mention the life of Sayyidina Umar and the blessed virtues and the morals that we learn from his life radiallahu anhu, we see that we can learn many lessons, and indeed, there are shining stars, radiallahu anhum ajma'in. For example, if we look at the adala of Sayyidina Umar, we look at the justice of Sayyidina Umar. It's just one aspect, and it's so many aspects. I was thinking on the way here how many aspects, there's so many that we cannot even comprehend in one speech. It will take days and nights just to speak about this. And books have been written upon that. Just look at the adala. This is why he is called Al-Imam Al-Adil. He's called the just leader, the most just leader of his time, Amir al-Mu'mineen. His adala, his justice. He would say in his time of his khilafah, when he was the Amir al-Mu'mineen, he would say, even if a dog under my khilafah, even if a dog remains hungry or thirsty, then I will be taken to court for them. I will have to give hisab in the way of Allah, in the presence of Allah for that. I will be taken to account for that. Even if a dog under my khilafah is oppressed or is hungry or thirsty. And what is happening now, my dear brothers and Muslims, my dear brothers and sisters in Islam, what is happening? Look at the Rohingya Muslims. Where are the Muslim leaders? What are they doing for them? People are dying, people are being raped, people are being killed, children are burned alive, are being hacked to pieces. Why is it that the Muslim leaders are not helping? Why? Because we're not mentioning people like Sayyidina Umar. We're not reading about people like Sayyidina Umar. The justice of Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, and how they took themselves to account. Every day they would do muhasabah. Before they sleep, they would do an account of themselves. What did I do today? What could I do better that I didn't do today? Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, they said because of his weeping, his excessive weeping in the presence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he would have marks on his cheeks. He would weep so much in the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that he would have marks on his cheeks like this. This is how much he would weep. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would take him to his account. For any little thing that something might have happened in his khilafah that he's responsible for, he would weep to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to forgive him and not to take him into account. And look at the leaders of today. They're not weeping. They're not feeling Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There was one old woman in the time of Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, that the stove in her house was not burned for 3 days. For 3 days, the stove was not being, that she didn't have anything to eat, anything significant to eat for 3 days. And she started to complain that may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala take Umar to account for this, because I haven't eaten for 3 days. And then the companions, they told Sayyidina Umar that this woman, she is complaining about you, Amir al-Mu'mineen, that she hasn't eaten for 3 days. And you are the Amir al-Mu'mineen. And right away he went to the house of that woman. Disguised. He didn't want to show who that, because that woman did not see the face of Sayyidina Umar before. He went to that woman, and himself, he started to prepare the food. Himself, he started to burn the stove. Himself, he fed the woman. And still the woman was saying, oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I have something against Umar, I have something against Umar. And he started to cry, he started to weep, he started to weep. He said, oh Allah, if this woman on the day of judgment stands before you and complains, then I'm going to be taken to account. I'm going to be taken. These are the people who were given the tarbiyah by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. These are the people who were the true leaders, who understood leadership. They did not want leadership. Leadership was given to them. And they took that responsibility seriously. And then he was crying, and the lady said, why are you crying so much? I'm talking about, he said, I am Umar. And then he asked forgiveness from the lady, and the lady said, I forgive you, I forgive you. That you were Umar all this time, you prepared the food, you were actually, and the hadith, the narration, it describes that he got on his knees, radiallahu anhu, and he actually prepared the fire, prepared the bread, and he cooked it for the Ummah. Which leader does this today? Nobody. And look at his love for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Another aspect, his ishq for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Once he came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked, how much do you love me, Umar? The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam asked Sayyidina Umar, how much do you love me? Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, he said, I love you, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, more than anything else except my own nafs. I love you, Ya Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He was honest. He's not going to lie in front of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Because these are the virtues of the true people, are the pious people, is they do not lie. They always tell the truth. He said, Ya Rasulullah, I love you more than everything else except my own self. And the Prophet ﷺ said, your iman is not complete yet. Ya Umar, your iman is not complete yet. So what do we learn from this? Before I end the narration, just reflecting on this. Which one of us here is like Sayyidina Umar? None of us. Which one of us here has the a'mal, has the taqwa, the fear of Allah like Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab? None of us. But the Prophet ﷺ is showing him that if you want, not only showing him, showing all of us, that if we want perfection of faith, if we want to taste the sweetness of the perfection of iman, then this is only tasted through the love of Rasulullah. This is only tasted through ishq of Rasulullah. A person can have many good actions, he can have many prayers, many sadaqah, many charities, but their iman is not complete until they taste the perfection of the love of Rasulullah. Then the Prophet ﷺ gave Sayyidina Umar a moment. And another narration, it said the Prophet ﷺ struck the chest, the heart of Sayyidina Umar with his blessed hand. There are some varying narrations of hadith. The barakah of the touch of Rasulullah ﷺ transformed Sayyidina Umar. And after a moment he said, now Ya Rasulullah ﷺ, I love you more than anything else, even my own self. Subhanallah. Subhanallah. Look at the transformation. And the Prophet ﷺ said, now you have it. Now you've reached the perfection. Look at his love for the Prophet ﷺ. Some people say, yes, he was very jalali. He was a majestic character, Sayyidina Umar. A majestic person, radiallahu anhu. He would come into jalal and he would become very majestic and sometimes harsh against the kuffar. But he would do this to defend Islam and to defend the Prophet ﷺ. For example, this is in the tafsir, in one of the tafasir. It is mentioned that there was one person in the time of Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, he would like to recite Surah Abasa in the Quran. He would lead Salah and he would always recite Surah Abasa. Sayyidina Umar found out about this. Why are you reciting Surah Abasa all the time? Because people think when you recite Surah Abasa, na'udhu billah, Allah is reprimanding the Prophet ﷺ. This is what people think. They have this misconception. They have this problem in their hearts. And there are people who are so sick in their hearts, they like to keep repeating that surah. And this is actually a sign of nifaq. So that person who was leading people in prayer, and he was trying to insult the Prophet ﷺ by reciting Surah Abasa, and Sayyidina Umar found out about that. Allah. And he knew that this person was not a true mu'min, because a true mu'min, he already was true mu'min. The Prophet ﷺ already showed Sayyidina Umar what is iman. He said, love of the Prophet ﷺ. When he said, how much do you love me? And when the Prophet ﷺ perfected that iman with his blessed touch, and when he said, now you have it, so Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anh knew that there's nothing greater than the love of the Prophet ﷺ to complete my faith. So when he's heard about this person who was trying to insult the Prophet ﷺ, he calls himself a Muslim, he's an Imam, he's reading Surah Abasa all the time. There's so many surahs of the Quran, why are you reciting Surah Abasa all the time? Sayyidina Umar went to that person and he found out who that person was. He was a munafiq and he killed him. He cut his head with his sword. radiallahu anhu, because he was insulting the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So if we look at the harshness and the jalal of Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, it was because of his love for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It was because of his love for the deen. Another aspect of the life of Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab al-Faruq radiallahu anhu was his love for the Ahlul Bayt. And I wanted to touch on this because we are in the month of Muharram, and this is the month which is connected to the Ahlul Bayt, to the household of the Prophet ﷺ, and to loving them and the virtues, especially during the 10th of Muharram, Karbala. We will be talking about these, and we'll be talking about these actually every day until the 10th, inshallah. We learn the adab and respect of the Ahlul Bayt from the Sahaba. This is the first source. From the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clearly says in the Quran, إِنَّمَا يُرِيدُ اللَّهُ لِيُذْهِبَ عَنْكُمُ الرِّجْسَ أَهْلَ الْبَيْتِ وَيُطَهِّرَكُمْ تَطْهِيرًا. That indeed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wishes to purify you, O members of the household of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, from any impurification, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wishes to purify you with a thorough purification. وَيُطَهِّرَكُمْ تَطْهِيرًا. And especially the Ahlul Kisa. The Ahlul Kisa, the people of the cloak, these are the people of the Prophet ﷺ, the 5 blessed souls that the Prophet ﷺ took them under the mantle, under his blessed burda, under his Kisa. Sayyidatina Fatima al-Zahra radiallahu anha, Sayyidina Ali radiallahu anhu, Sayyidina Imam Hassan, Sayyidina Imam Hussein radiallahu anhum. And in another narration, Sayyidina Jibreel alayhi salam came and asked, can I also be a member? And then the Prophet ﷺ said, come. So the Ahlul Bayt, the love of the Ahlul Bayt is from our Iman. This is also a part of our Iman. And Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu definitely displayed and had this, and he was a propagator and a champion of the love of the Ahlul Bayt. For example, when the uncle of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Sayyidina Abbas radiallahu anhu, would come walking by, and Sayyidina Umar was on his mount, on his camel or horse, he would get off his mount. Allah. He would get off the mount, and they would say, why are you getting off your mount? He said, this is the adab of the family of Rasulullah. So this is the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ. We respect the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ. We respect the family of the Prophet ﷺ. So we learn the respect of the family of the Prophet ﷺ from the Sahaba. And we learn the respect of the Sahaba from the family of the Prophet ﷺ. They loved each other. And this is the message we should carry forth. Not that they hated each other. This is a misconception. For example, Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddeeq radiallahu anhu, he said, إِرْقَبُوا مُحَمَّدًا sallallahu alayhi wa sallam fi ahli baytihi. He said, honor the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And you want to honor Rasulullah? He said, honor the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam by honoring the members of his family. If you want to honor the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, honor him sallallahu alayhi wa sallam by honoring the members of his family. Once, the son of Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu, companion of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he was young. He was playing with the grandsons of the Prophet ﷺ. Look at this, and I'll leave with this, inshallah. Beautiful event in the time of Sayyidina Umar. We learn the love of the Ahlul Bayt and the love of the Prophet ﷺ. So the son of Sayyidina Umar, or Abdullah ibn Umar, was playing with Sayyidina Imam al-Hassan al-Hussein, and they were young. And you know, when you're young, radiallahu anhum, then sometimes you say things, and often you say, my father is better than your father, or my parent is this, and your parent is that. Right? There's a comparison because you love your mother and father so much, you want to think that my mother and father are the best. My grandfather and grandparents are the best. And when it comes to the Sayyidina Imam Hassan al Hussein, their grandfather is the best. So they have every right to say that my grandfather is the best, because who is their grandfather? Sayyidina Muhammad Rasulullah, Khattab al-Anbiya wal-Mursaleen, Sahibi Qadha Qawsayni aw Adna. So when they are playing with Abdullah ibn Umar, and they said, just in play, they said, your father is just a servant of our grandfather. Your father Umar is just a servant of our grandfather Prophet Muhammad. So Abdullah ibn Umar, he got a little bit, he felt a little bit worried, he felt a little bit upset. He said, they're insulting my father. He didn't understand what was being said. So he went to Sayyidina Umar. He said, Ya Abi, oh my father, Al-Hassan al-Hussein, they said that, you're just a servant of their grandfather, Prophet Muhammad. He said, is that what they said? He said, call them. So he called them to my presence. And they came to his presence. He said, is this what you said? They said, yes, we said this. He said, write it down. Allah. He said, write this down on a piece of parchment, on a piece of paper. Okay, they said they wrote it down. They said, when I die, bury this in my grave with me.
نعرة تكبير نعرة رسالة
Bury this in my grave with me, that I am a servant of Rasulullah. Allah. This is Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu. This is the love of the Ahlul Bayt. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to benefit from them, Ya Arhamar Rahimin. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us His love, the love of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the love of the Ahlul Bayt, the love of the Sahaba, the love of the Awliya Allah, and that we follow in their footsteps, Ya Arhamar Rahimin. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive our sins. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us a blessed new year, that we do everything which is in your pleasure and the pleasure of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remove the suffering from the Ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Khususan the Muslims in Rohingya and Burma. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remove any suffering from them. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cause us and allow our leaders to wake up, Ya Arhamar Rahimeen, and do something about this, to follow the likes of Sayyidina Umar radiallahu anhu, that they will be taken to account if they have the power. Ya Arhamar Rahimeen, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive all those who have passed away from the Ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. May Allah raise their darajat and give them access to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam's companionship in Jannatul Firdaus, Ya Arhamar Rahimeen. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant shifa and afiyah to all those who are sick, all those who are suffering, Ya Arhamar Rahimeen. وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد الصادق الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وآخر دعوانا